There are a few things you can completely rely on. These include death, taxes, and referees in pro sports causing controversy. An MMA referee's job isn't easy. You have to balance a fighter's ego and the chance of them getting seriously injured. As such, we have put together a list of the biggest controversial finishes in MMA history. At number 10, Chris Cyborg versus Jan Finney at Strikeforce, Fedor versus Werdrum. This was controversial due to the fact that Chris Cyborg was coming off victories over Marlos Conan and Gina Carano at the time, and she was already building an early case for being the finest women's fighter on the planet. On the other hand, Finney's record was a mediocre 8-7, and she did not have a single victory inside the Strikeforce cage during her career. Cyborg entered the cage as the -2,000 betting favorite and displayed that dominance throughout the fight. However, the controversy in this one would be a little different. Cyborg had Finney knocked out in the second round, thus the end of the fight was met with some degree of criticism. The contentious nature of this conclusion is not because it was cut off too soon, rather it was stopped much too late. Finney gave the impression of being out of her depth from the very beginning of the match, during which she was repeatedly struck. The battle caused an uproar since Finney was subjected to an unholy butt-kicking before it was stopped, and the referee should have stopped the fight much sooner. At number 9, Anthony Johnson versus Kevin Burns at UFC Fight Night, Silva versus Irvin. This is undoubtedly one of the most glaring examples of incompetence that any single athletic event has encountered, probably in any sport ever. In 2008, when Anthony Johnson fought Kevin Burns, Johnson was forced to do so while blind in one eye. During the course of the fight, Burns made contact with Johnson's eyes on 4 separate occasions. Nevertheless, neither points were awarded to Johnson, nor were they deducted from Burns, and he wasn't even disqualified for his actions. In the third and final round of the fight, Johnson was once again stabbed in the eyes, which caused him to fall to the canvas. Even though Johnson had an eye injury during the match, Burns was awarded the victory. The victory was upheld even though Johnson went directly to the Athletic Commission in an effort to have the fight annulled, since eye pokes are not a legitimate strike and are one of the few things not allowed in MMA. But the decision stood, and it's a disgrace to this day. At number 8, Aspen Ladd versus Germaine de Randamie at UFC Sacramento. If you ever wondered whether companies like UFC truly champion feminism and what it stands for, get ready for this one. At the main event of UFC Sacramento in 2019, Aspen Ladd and Germaine de Randamie squared off against each other. De Randamie finished the fight in the 16th second with a single punch. Although Herb Dean stepped in to stop the fight after a right hand knocked Ladd down, several spectators and even Ladd herself felt that the fight should not have been stopped so soon. Ladd and her team moved to the commission to overturn the fight because it was a premature stoppage. The talk was that the fight normally wouldn't have been halted and was only stopped because she was a woman. We reiterate, they claimed that the stoppage would not have occurred if she hadn't been a woman. The committee members of the Athletic Commission came to a judgment that was strangely split 3-2, and they chose to rule against Ladd's case, which meant that Germaine was awarded the victory. At number 7, Robbie Lawler versus Ben Askren at UFC 235. The highly anticipated 2019 matchup between Ben Askren and Robbie Lawler was Askren's UFC debut and was marred by controversy. Lawler got a terrific start, nearly knocking out Askren in the process. Despite this, Askren could survive, and he quickly turned the tables on the former champion. In the end, Askren successfully put Lawler in a bulldog choke. However, the referee, Herb Dean, did not wait for Lawler to tap out or even pass out. He stopped the match. Although the ending was contentious, Lawler remained a good sport about it and did not challenge the outcome of the fight. However, even if he did, the ruling would probably stand since he was unlikely to get out of that one. At number 6, Drew Dober versus Leandro Silva at UFC Fight Night, Maia versus LaFleur. In Leandro Silva's fight with Drew Dober, it would be a gross understatement to say that some home cooking was involved. In the second round, Silva grabbed Dober and looked for an opportunity to execute a guillotine choke. The referee, Eduardo Herdy, abruptly stopped the fight just as Dober was beginning to release himself from his opponent's grasp. Despite the fact that Silva was never knocked out or put in any kind of peril during the fight, the referee awarded him the victory, thanks to a technical submission. Dober was awarded his win bonus by UFC President Dana White as a result of the egregious blunder, and to everyone's surprise, the Brazilian Athletic Commission reversed the fight to a no contest after the referee recognized that he had made a mistake. At number 5, Tonya Evinger versus Yana Kunitskaya Invicta FC 20. In November 2016, it appeared that Tonya Evinger's reign as Invicta champion had come to an end. In a match against the challenger, Yana Kunitskaya, Evinger found herself trapped in an armbar by the opponent. Even though it was a fully legal move, the referee instructed Evinger not to use her heel on Kunitskaya's face in an attempt to wiggle out of the armbar. This was despite the referee allowing Evinger to execute that technique. Kunitskaya submitted Evinger soon after. Evinger was able to keep her bantamweight title due to the verdict being overturned by the Missouri Athletic Commission after they discovered the error and realized their mistake. At number 4, Ian Cutelaba versus Mago Nurmagomedov Ankalaev at UFC Fight Night Benavidez vs. Figueiredo. How long do you think it takes a bad referee to cook up some controversy? Try 38 seconds. Cutelaba began comically wobbling all over the place as soon as Ankalaev landed a massive shot in the opening seconds of the match. In reality, Cutelaba was only playing possum, hoping that Ankalaev would jump in for a big shot just so he could then catch him out. Referee Kevin McDonald abruptly called an end to the match because he incorrectly believed that Cutelaba was unable to stand. The ruling would remain despite Cutelaba's attempt to overturn the bout by filing an appeal with the commission. It would appear that the old adage, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, is still applicable today. At number 3, Tito Ortiz vs. Ken Shamrock 2 UFC 61. At UFC 61, the rivalry between Tito Ortiz and Ken Shamrock was scheduled to come to a head and be resolved. Following Ortiz's dominant performance in their first matchup, which took place at UFC 40, the competitors met for a battle where they left with more questions than answers. In the very first exchange of the fight, Ortiz pulled Shamrock down and immediately began throwing elbows at him. After what appeared to be 3 short elbows, referee Herb Dean moved in to stop the fight. Shamrock immediately protested the decision and the crowd began to boo. A trilogy match between both fighters was scheduled by UFC President Dana White, who appeared to be on the side of Ken Shamrock. Ortiz prevailed with relative ease once more. At number 2, Michael Chiesa vs. Kevin Lee at UFC Oklahoma City. It was anticipated that the main event encounter between lightweights Michael Chiesa and Kevin Lee at UFC Oklahoma City would be a thrilling battle between 2 submission aces. However, Chiesa and Lee ended up in a draw. In the end, the fight was finished by submission, although it was a very contentious victory. The rear naked choke that Lee applied to Chiesa in the opening round was enough to end the fight. Chiesa, on the other hand, neither tapped nor went out. Chiesa objected to the match as soon as it began and eventually submitted a formal complaint requesting that it be cancelled. To no one's surprise, it wasn't. At number 1, Kazushi Sakuraba vs. Marcus Silveira at UFC Japan. It was a very particular debut for Kazushi Sakuraba in the UFC. In the early stages of the fight, Silveira was able to connect a solid combination just as Sakuraba attempted to take him down. The bout was stopped for Silveira because referee John McCarthy believed that Sakuraba had been knocked out rather than aiming for a takedown. This decision resulted in a protest from both Sakuraba and the crowd that was present. McCarthy changed his mind about his decision a few minutes later after conducting a thorough study. This particular fight occurred in the 1990s, before Japan had many governing rules for MMA. Sakuraba prevailed via armbar in the rematch that took place later that evening. That was our list. Do you agree with our picks? What decision was the most controversial in your opinion? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on future updates.